This is the Max Kellerman Show. Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio.
Yes, the Max Kellerman Show. What's going on, nerds? ESPN Radio, ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. So my New York football Giants are committing to Dave Gettleman. I'll let you know if that's the right choice in a few. I'll give you a hint, by the way. The answer rhymes with no, but we're going to get to that in a few. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests join me on the Goodyear Hotline. LA, is LeBron ever going to slow down? And if LeBron just wanted to keep playing basketball, could he play until he was 50? Like, if he was content not being the star player. Oof. First, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless.
You're going to have Alex Van Pelt calling plays.
This is devastating. He's a great play caller. Play calling is not a science. It's an art. It's a feel. It's anticipation.
That's the buzz phrase today. Play calling is an art. Ryan Clark kept telling me this on First Take today. Play calling's an art. You know, Stefanski has a feel for it. Stefanski is, meanwhile, one of 5 members of the organization, of the Browns organization, who's tested positive for COVID-19 and will miss the upcoming game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a tough break for the Cleveland Browns. Their training facility, meantime, remains closed. That's today, Wednesday. A source tells ESPN's Adam Schefter. The team, the Cleveland Browns, they're continuing to prepare for Sunday night's wild card game virtually. It's a road game against Big Brother Pittsburgh Steelers at Pittsburgh, and they're preparing virtually without their head coach while awaiting additional test results. So how big a loss is this for the Cleveland Browns? And do I still like the Cleveland Browns in the upset, right? That's the question. Well, my nemesis on the air, one of my many nemeses on the air, Dan Orlovsky, ESPN NFL analyst and maybe a coach one day, was on Shanae and Golick Jr. yesterday and had this to say about Cleveland's chances now without Stefanski to upset the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs on the road.
This is devastating. He's a great play caller. Play calling is not a science. It's an art. It's a feel. It's anticipation. I think they'll be okay in the first quarter. I think they'll script the whole first quarter, especially with third down situations. But you got 8 seconds to get your play call in between when the play's blown dead and the next snap to get the play in and out of your huddle. You got like 8 seconds as a play caller. So unless they script the whole game and Alex Van Pelt is absolutely out of his mind when it comes to the feel of the game, I just don't think there's any way that – and that breaks my heart because I was going to pick them. I was going to take Cleveland. I don't think they can.
That's interesting because I was going to take Cleveland, and I'm still taking them, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to argue against guys who have played in the NFL for years and coaches, et cetera, and like I spoke to a bunch, like Dan Orlovsky played in the NFL. Obviously, Ryan Clark did, and Dominique Foxworth, and everyone's saying the same thing, play calling, how important it is and everything, and I would just say this about a head coach. I'm not discounting, especially a guy who has tight reins over an offense, right? Who's going to call all the plays. A head coach who's really an offensive coordinator, and that's his area of expertise. I'm not downplaying the importance of that. What I will say, though, is there is a component of coaching that's like a cornerman in boxing, right? When you talk about the great trainers, it's not so much what they do on fight night. It's the preparation. It's the weeks and weeks in training camp. It's the discipline. It's the relationship with the fighter. It's the focus, all that stuff, the study, and then the execution in training camp, right? And now you get to the night of the fight. Of course, a corner man is important. They see strategy and they make adjustments and they encourage the fighter in the moment of truth. But at least as important is the training. So I would say this. I think there is an analogy here. I'm not discounting play calling. I will say, though, that the preparation, the focus, like the Browns have maybe the best offensive line in the game, and they run a zone run blocking scheme, right? That's what Stefanski does offensively. That's like the play action, a lot of that stuff. And it's not like that goes away because Stefanski's not there. When people talk about the kind of play calling in the field, they're talking about tactical brilliance. of a coach or an offensive coordinator or whoever's in charge of calling the plays on offense. That's tactics. In chess, chess is a great game for explaining the difference between strategy and tactics. Strategy is what you're trying to do. So in chess, that might be I want to open up the C file or do whatever. I want to put pressure on the king side, whatever it is. Tactics is how you do it. I do this, he does that. I do this, he does that. I do this, he does that, and now I'm in the position I want to be. So I'm not discounting the tactical advantage that Stefanski gives the Browns. But I will say that the strategic reason the Browns are here remains the same. And that has a lot to do with Stefanski, but that doesn't go anywhere. It's the way you play offense. It's the way you're coached up together. It's the attitude of the team. Now, by the way, the Browns had their work cut out for them when they had to go on the road to play Pittsburgh anyway. So without Stefanski, it's longer odds. But I'm taking the upset. And I'll give you two reasons why. 888-SAY-ESPN, Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio. I'll give you two reasons why. One, all that stuff doesn't change the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers can't block for the run, so they can't run the ball. That doesn't change. On the other side of the ball, the Cleveland Browns can really run the ball and have arguably the best offensive line in the game as the season wore on. That's one. And two, there's an ascending quarterback, and that's Baker Mayfield. And just because Stefanski's not there to hold his hand, I mean, he's going to have his big boy pants on. He can't get shaken because his guy's not there. But he's an ascending quarterback. And we've seen from Baker Mayfield when he had 4 different head coaches in a little over 2 seasons. And by the way, who were those head coaches? Baker Mayfield's head coaches were Hugh Jackson, the worst coach in the game at the time. Obviously, look at the record of the team. Followed by Greg Williams, who had success with Greg Williams. Greg Williams was so bad that he's probably out of football permanently because of a defensive play call. Talk about play calling. It was so egregiously outrageous, right, that people said, Greg Williams, you're fired, and you know what? Bountygate didn't do it, but now you can't be in football anymore. I don't think he's allowed in organized football anymore, any level. So that's his next coach. His third coach is Freddy Kitchens, who is a disaster. You could argue the worst coach in football. He's had 3 coaches. One guy's out of the league probably permanently because of how bad he is. And the other 2, you could argue, were the worst coaches in the league when they were with him. So Baker Mayfield wasn't god-awful, but he clearly was a bust as the number 1 overall pick, right? He was, and if he's a starter, it's just barely. Now he has a good coach, Kevin Stefanski. Right? Look what he did with Minnesota as the offensive coordinator. Look what he's done with Cleveland as the head coach. And how has Baker responded? Great. Baker's good. He's not just a starting quarterback. He looks like a franchise quarterback. He looks like a good starting quarterback, which is saying a lot. It's a very competitive position. So does he need Stefanski there calling all the plays for that to be true? Or is it rather that Stefanski has the kind of culture and the kind of basic strategy, not just tactics, I do this, he does this, I do this, he does this, and I something good happens, but the basic strategic position that benefits Baker Mayfield, because I think that is more important even than the tactical advantage Stefanski might give you as a play caller. So Baker is an ascending quarterback. What about Ben Roethlisberger? Right? On the one hand, the Browns can run the ball. Now, they're running into a great Pittsburgh defense against the run, but still, the Browns can run the ball. On the flip side, Pittsburgh can't run the ball at all. And the Browns have an ascending quarterback. What about Pittsburgh's quarterback? When was the last time you watched Roethlisberger this season and said, oh, he's great? It's been a long time, hasn't it? He's descending. He's had a great year for a guy coming off a catastrophic injury at the age of 38 without an offensive line to block for the run. But his season's been going in the wrong direction. For those reasons, it comes down to me, can Baker make enough plays to win the game in the moments of truth? I'm going to say yes. I'm feeling more about Baker now like I did when I watched him in college than like I did when I watched him over the last couple of years in bad environments. That was Straight Talk Wireless, no contract, no compromise. Meantime, Giants co-owner John Mara confirmed that Dave Gettleman will return in 2021, according to multiple sources. He will retain the same job title and responsibilities, according to ESPN and multiple reports. The Giants went 6-10 this season, and that is heading in the right direction, which is why he's keeping his job. But that is damning someone with faint praise. You go 6-10, 888-SAY-ESPN New York. You want Gettleman to keep the job? 888-SAY-ESPN, 729-3776. When 6-10 in year 3 is heading in the right direction, that's a problem. Like, when you are bad, you get high draft picks. It's hard in the NFL to not be at least 6-10 after multiple losing seasons. It's hard to not be at least that. Is he doing a good enough job? No, he's not. Look, I love having Saquon Barkley on the Giants. I know he's injured this year, but part of sports is the joy of watching it. And I get to watch the guy when he's healthy that like is, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. That's awesome to have Saquon on the Giants. But there's a reason that teams that draft running backs that high never, ever, never win the Super Bowl. When was the last time it happened that a team that drafted a running back in the top 5 won the Super Bowl? Doesn't happen. You know why? Because running backs, as awesome as they are to watch, are really mostly about the run blocking. As Casey Joyner, the football scientist, said on this show many times, and I've repeated since then many times. And he's looked back at he's looked at this for years and years and years. And in other words, he's seen years and years of data. A great running back behind bad run blocking, a great one, gets 3 yards a carry if the run blocking's bad. That's why it's not like James Conner stinks. It's Pittsburgh can't block for the run. An average running back behind good run blocking, 7 yards a carry. An average running back behind a good line is more than twice as effective as a good running back behind a bad line. Well, what about a great running back behind a good line, right? 10 yards a carry. That's significant, 3 yards per carry, but if you're getting 7 yards a carry, you're laughing. It's not like that premium to 10 yards. That's why no, if you're getting 7 yards a carry, you have a great running game, right? You got a great run game. That's why you don't draft the running back second overall. So Gettleman, given enough draft capital and enough time, of course you're going to win 6 freaking games. Does that mean that you keep him? I like Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones already a tick below average starting quarterback. And that's not an insult. If in year 2 you're almost an average starter, you're good. That's promising. That means you can wind up above average. But when you look at Daniel Jones, do you think that guy's going to be a great quarterback? If you draft a guy 6th overall at quarterback, shouldn't he be like if you're drafting consistently high in the draft, shouldn't you get a great quarterback eventually? Anthony in the Bronx, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Max, big fan. Thanks for taking the call. Listen, I'm a big Giants fan. You know, I think the NFL is a league of continuity. And I don't think the answer is constant change. We got our quarterback. We got our coach. I think we got our GM, too. You got to look at some of the positive things he did. He stole Leonard Williams from the Jets. That was a huge trade. Huge.
He did?
We're in a conference,
He did. He picked the right coach, it seems. Yep.
We're in a conference, Max, where I think every other team besides us has no idea who their quarterback's going to be next season. That's a plus for us. I think we need to surround Daniel Jones. I hope this draft we get some weapons. Maybe the kid Chase from LSU. Who knows if the kid from Alabama might drop? You never know. If we could surround Daniel Jones with more weapons, I wasn't a big fan of drafting Barkley. I think that was a mistake, but it is what it is. If we could get this kid some weapons.
And we had now, and listen, okay, Anthony, I appreciate the call. And let's say this. It is the fact, like, you don't draft a running back number 2 overall. However, here's the upside. We got Saquon Barkley. If you're a Giants fan, you're like, okay, like whatever. But now he's on the team, and guess who has Saquon Barkley? The Giants. And he's an absolute weapon. A weapon. There's no doubt about it. And do I think that Gettleman, given enough time, is capable of fielding a competitive team, a team that's competitive for the playoffs, even if the division doesn't stink? Yes, I do. But that just means a basic level of competence. The NFL is set up in such a way that if you're not completely incompetent, it's not a draft lottery like the NBA. The worse your record, the better your draft pick. So if you're consistently under 500, you're going to consistently be getting these excellent draft picks. Eventually, by the way, in a major media market, the whole thing, it's desirable to play. Eventually, you're going to field a competitive team. Is that enough to say he's the guy? I agree with you about continuity. And you don't want to just be to react to every bad thing and keep a revolving door. But I didn't think Gettleman was the right hire when they made it. And I'll tell you something else, Anthony, from the Bronx. He's having a deleterious effect upon the accents of New York. Because I heard Anthony in the Bronx just say quarterback. He got that from Gettleman. Back in the old days, a couple years ago, it was called a quarterback. Quarterback. If you live in New York City, a quarterback. And then Gettleman came on with his ridiculous Boston accent and started calling a quatterback, which I don't even know what that is, but apparently now Anthony in the Bronx says it the same way. Shame on you. Keelan in Texas, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
How you doing, Max? I was wondering, who do you think should take Drew? I was wondering, who do you think should take Drew Brees' place in New Orleans? Should we go out and get somebody like, Matt Stafford, or we should get somebody in the draft?
Well, listen, that's a good question. If you think you find the right guy in the draft where the Saints are going to be picking, of course you draft them. The question really you're asking is Taysom Hill a quarterback? I think he is. I really think he is. I think considering how many actual, snaps he's had as a quarterback of the team, like he's an experienced player, he's been in the league, but how often has he gotten to quarterback the New Orleans Saints in actual games? Not that often. I know he's, older, considering that's the case, and he is actually just a real fast guy who can catch the ball and do a lot of things, but his versatility shouldn't be held against him. He does not have the world's greatest arm. The question is, does he have a good enough arm? I think the answer is yes. Then, can he read defenses? It seems to me he can. Can he be accurate enough? I think so. Especially considering when you can run like he can run, and by the way, catch like he can catch, and even block like he can block, he gives you an enormous advantage on offense because of the level of unpredictability and versatility he brings. And we've seen in the modern NFL, I'm not saying he's not Lamar Jackson fast, because who is? But Taysom Hill's like a 4.40 guy. He's fast. And the questions about can he read defenses and get the ball to his receivers, so far so good. So I would not rule him out going forward as the Saints quarterback. By the way, LeBron with 26, 11, and 7 last night. No signs of slowing down. You know what's insane about that? Like if LeBron really was just like, I just love basketball and want to play forever, we see, the best tandem in the NBA in terms of net rating is actually LeBron and Marc Gasol, at least until yesterday. I don't know if that's still the case, but they were plus 23 something. But the point is, Marc Gasol is still effective because he's tall, right? So he can still protect the rim. He can play defense. He knows how, even if he's not physically the same. Doesn't play as many minutes. And he can shoot. Right? So he's still a more than serviceable NBA player. He's a good player for the time he's in the game. Think about, and as he's aging, right? Think about LeBron. Dude is 6'8", and he's as great a basketball genius in terms of the way he sees the game as anyone who's ever lived. He's like Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, IQ. And he's 6'8", and by the way, because of the game nowadays, he's shot so much from distance, he's a pretty good three-point shooter. Not great, but he can shoot the three. And he can shoot free throws. Also not great, but he can do it. So at that size, with that passing ability and physical strength, like right now we're saying, okay, LeBron's still the best player in the game. And he's made 3 title defenses, right? Because first, here comes Steph. No, it ain't Steph. LeBron's better than Steph. And then here comes KD. Nope, LeBron's better than KD. And now here comes Kawhi. LeBron's better than Kawhi. I thought by now the best player in the game would be AD. They're on the same team, and LeBron's better than him. So we're just talking about LeBron as the best in the game still, which means it might take a year or two for him not to be the best in the game. But barring injury, knock wood, he'll still be MVP caliber after he's not the best in the game anymore. And then after that, there's all-star caliber. I mean, the dude could play till, really, there's no end in sight. Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio, is presented by Progressive Insurance, making it easy to bundle your home and car insurance. Playoffs start this weekend. Who made the cut in my playoff power rankings? It's been an exciting football season, hasn't it? Luckily for us football fans, there is still more action to be had. You may not have been crowned the champion in your traditional fantasy football league, but DraftKings is here to help make it rain. By the way, people are still playing season-long fantasy. I know, but I don't know why. It's great if you do, if you enjoy it, but daily fantasy, boy, whew. That is, shall we say, distilled fantasy. DraftKings is America's. Need to read that copy, Raj. Just got to roll it back a little bit. DraftKings is America's. There it is, leading daily fantasy app, paying out over $7 billion to their players. If you haven't tried DraftKings yet, head to the App Store now because you don't want to miss this. It's simple. Just pick your lineup, stand under the salary cap, and see how your team stacks up against the competition. If you haven't signed up yet, what are you waiting for? Get in the game right from your couch. Download DraftKings Fantasy app now. Use code MAX. For a limited time, new customers can get a free shot at millions of dollars in prizes this week. Don't miss out on this week's action. Enter code MAX to get a free shot at millions of dollars in prizes with your first deposit. That's code MAX only at DraftKings. Make it rain. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. My playoff power rankings next. The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Did the Packers do enough to overtake the Chiefs in the playoff power rankings? Which playoff power rankings, you ask? The playoff power rankings. My playoff power rankings, of course. Yes, I know. Nowadays, everyone has a playoff power ranking. But, Raj, it's outrageous that they ripped that off me. I remember where I was when I invented power rankings, and now everyone does them. I was walking down Broadway one day here in New York. Yeah. And I thought to myself, there should be a ranking of NFL teams as the season goes on. That's not a static ranking, but changes from week to week based on how the teams are performing. And then I just needed a catchy name for it. And I thought, what if we called them the Max rankings? And Raj, you told me you thought that was too self-serving. And I think it was a big mistake. I should have called it the Max rankings, but I decided to call it the Power rankings, and here we are. Yeah, well.
Someone even got the nerve to change the name. Some call it the Power rankings without even changing the name. There's no shame in their game.
I know. You would think they have the decency just at least change it from Power rankings to your own name. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests join me on the Goodyear Hotline.
No bias.
I really like football.
Just facts.
Don't get it crooked here, what I'm saying.
Max's NFL Power Rankings.
Now, normally, the way we do this is Raj will give me my power rankings from the previous week. However, this is now the playoffs. We're in the postseason, and we're coming off Christmas break, right? So there was not a last week's ranking, and furthermore, what would that have to do with, with these playoffs? So it's a brand new Max's NFL playoff power rankings, Raj. So why don't we just begin?
All right, well, we still have the count. So what does the count have first?
5.
This was my preseason pick originally to get out of the NFC, the New Orleans Saints. By the way, according to reports, Michael Thomas has made, quote, good progress since getting placed on IR in Week 14. He will practice on a limited basis today, Wednesday, before ramping things up later in the week. Now, the Saints have not really had time where we've seen them this season with Drew Brees and Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders and Alvin Kamara and the defense with the addition of Quan Alexander, we have not seen it yet. But I predict when we do see it, that's going to be very tough to beat. I think they're going to be too much for the Chicago Bears defense, and that's saying something because the Bears can play some defense. I was tempted to even have the Saints higher than 5, but given the performance of the teams in front of them, I couldn't do it. By the way, the Saints defense is a lot different from the one that the Bears played the first time. Like, this is a different kind of defense. The Saints defense has come a long way. Who's next?
All right, Count. Who's next?
4.
Well, I'll tell you who's next. I just wait for the Count to say that. The Count was my favorite character on Sesame Street. I liked the numbers as a kid. Although looking back at it, clearly I think Cookie Monster has to be considered the GOAT Sesame Street character, but maybe we could bracket up Sesame Street characters during the tournament and run the tournament. Anyway, at number 4, the Tampa Bay Bucks. I got to give it to Tom Brady. I got to give it up. Like, there's no shame in my game. I'm not fronting, you know? I might have slept on him, but I'm not fronting on him. Tom Brady took over a team that was not missing much. They just needed a kind of good enough quarterback, and they would go from 7-9 because Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions to the tune of 112 points to the opposition last year, and they went 7-9. And you would think Tom Brady would make them 9-7, 10-6 if he's kind of a mid-pack quarterback. He was better than that. And they won more games than that. It's an 11-win team. Wait, did they win 11 or 12? They won 11. It's an 11-win team. That's pretty damn good. It's more than I'd take the over on 9.5 games. That's 10. They did a game better than that. But more than that, they're peaking at the right time. The Bucs look as good as they've looked all season, including when they got super hot, like early middle season, when they beat the snot out of the Packers at Tampa. This is a team that can play defense. This is a team where Bruce Arians has pushed the right buttons every step of the way, including Tom Brady's buttons. He's had Tom Brady's back when he needed to. He's aired him out in public when he needed to send a message to the team to expect a lot of Tom Brady, and Brady has absolutely been the great leader advertised coming in and has the Bucs primed to make a real run in these playoffs. I have them at 4.
All right, let's go back to the Count.
3.
At 3 is a guy who I think is in the MVP conversation. He ain't going to win it. But if I had to do a list of the best quarterbacks in football, he'd be in the top 5. And that's Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. They separated themselves this year. When you look at the post-Tom Brady Patriots dynasty, who wanted to take over the division? Well, we saw the Bills really challenge them last year. But I thought the Dolphins, they were my sleeper pick this year. And I thought the Dolphins had as good a chance as the Bills, just about. But the Bills separated themselves. Not just from teams like the Patriots and Dolphins, and obviously the Jets, in their own division. But I think even from teams like, for example, in the AFC, the Colts or the Titans or teams like that, right? That kind of, that's a nice team all around. But the Bills are better, and the reason they're better is because they have a special quarterback in Josh Allen. I think were it not for the Chiefs, the Bills would come out of the AFC. Unfortunately for them, the Chiefs exist.
All right, we coming down to the wire. Let's hear from the Count.
2.
Am I talking Packers or Chiefs here? Chiefs lost their last game. Mahomes didn't play. They've looked vulnerable recently. And Aaron Rodgers, the MVP this year, no two ways about it. There's no argument for anyone else. He played more games than Mahomes and performed just as well as Mahomes and did it in spite of not being on as good an offensive team as Mahomes, independent of his own play. Is it Packers or Chiefs? It's Packers at 2. The Green Bay Packers, by the way, notice this. New Orleans Saints at 5. Tampa Bay at 4. Bills at 3, but I'm really focusing on the Saints and the Bucs and now the Packers, all veteran quarterbacks and veteran leaders, and especially the Bucs and the Packers, they're peaking right now. They've played better and better as the season wore on, and they're peaking at just the right time. Is that coincidence, or does that have something to do with veteran leadership at the position, which is the most important, certainly the most glamorous in American team sports, also probably the most important, certainly in football, if not all of American team sports. And you're talking about two of the greatest who ever did it in Brady and Rodgers. The Packers are absolutely peaking right now. Look, by some metrics, they're a top 10 defense. I don't think the Packers are a top 10 defense. I think when you look at it all in all, they are a top half of the league defense. I don't know about top third, but they're close. And when you consider what they can do on offense and what LaFleur has done, winning 13 games before Rodgers even knew what he was doing in that system, just kind of Rodgers as game manager, Rodgers as a guy who you go, wait a minute, is he not the same anymore? Won 13 games and beat Seattle in the playoffs last year with that Rodgers. And now you have Rodgers having as good a season, not only as he's ever had, but really as has ever been had. Can you really look at another quarterback in another season and say, that guy was definitely better than Rodgers has been this year? I mean, I guess the Tampa Bay game, brings that back a little bit, but he has been fantastic. And for that reason, the peaking Packers are two right now. And of course, count. 1. Count's a little slow on the draw. That leaves the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, here's the crazy thing about Patrick Mahomes, and it's never been like this for another quarterback in the history of the modern NFL. Mahomes got a lot of weapons. There's no two ways about it. Got great offensive weapons on the team. Got a good enough defense, you hope, right? Mahomes is absolutely expected to win the Super Bowl this year. And by the way, for the foreseeable future, I cannot remember a time when a quarterback was so good that, and by the way, his situation was so good, that year in and year out, it felt like he's supposed to win the Super Bowl. You could say Tom Brady and the Patriots, but I disagree. I think in his best seasons, Tom Brady, like when the Patriots went 16-0, they were expected to win the Super Bowl, but not every year. Every year, the Patriots are expected to compete for the Super Bowl. Were they to get there and lose, people wouldn't have been like, oh, that's a bad season. That's just what happens sometimes. But this Chiefs team is expected to win. I am not the only person who said throughout the season, I'm not just taking them as the odds-on favorite. I'm taking them as the favorite, period. Meaning I don't merely give them the best chance to win the Super Bowl of any team. I give them a better than 50-50 chance. That is unbelievable and speaks volumes about Mahomes, by the way, who had a bad game when last seen, right? Threw what should have been a pick, but it wasn't a pick. And then he had one of his patented ridiculous Mahomes throws that wound up winning the game. It feels when he's playing as though he's toying with NFL teams, like he's playing cat and mouse, making them believe they maybe could win the game and then just putting them out of their misery at the last second. Chiefs are number one. Jerry Jones just playing with us. Speaking of people playing games, no doubt is next. The NFL playoffs kick off this weekend. They don't kick out, Raj. That would be ridiculous. They kick off this weekend. And we've got Ravens-Titans this Sunday, 1:05 p.m. Eastern on ABC, ESPN, and ESPN Deportes. That's a great game. Ooh, is there pressure on Lamar? And the ESPN MegaCast broadcast continues. That's worth watching on ESPN2. Those are great. ESPN Plus and Freeform. Radio, ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, SiriusXM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker. How big is this rematch versus the Heat tonight for the Celtics? Going to get into that, no doubt. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN. By the way, did you see what Embiid is doing for Philly? 888-729-3776. Going to get right down to it.
We got you covered.
Let me tell you what I think it means.
No doubt.
All right, Max, you saw the news, man. You saw the news. Chan Gailey no longer going to be the offensive coordinator. Chan did the best thing for Tua.
Yeah, I think so. No doubt. No doubt. I think he did because really, why was Gailey hired in the first place? That was for Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick ain't the quarterback anymore. So, people are actually asking questions, should Tua be the guy or should it be someone else? I believe in Tua, and I think you have to find the right match for him at OC, so no doubt.
All right. Hey, the Celtics need this revenge game versus the Heat tonight, boy.
Nah, son. It's early in the season. I know it's a 72-game season, not an 82-game season, but there's plenty of time. The Celtics have been an up-and-down team. They have been inconsistent. And Jaylen Brown's been great, and Tatum can still show you why. People like me have been saying for a couple years now, he can be the number one option on a championship-caliber team. But this has been an inconsistent showing for the Celtics so far. Like I just brought up the Sixers. The Sixers are consistently getting after it, especially on the defensive end. The Celtics have been up and down. But by the way, Heat too, right? Heat haven't hit their stride either. It's way too early in the season to call anything a must-win.
All right. Hey, Jerry Jones just playing with us saying Dak has all the leverage.
Nah, son. Jerry Jones is keeping it 100. Now, I advise against this. I advise kids to keep it 90. You got to give yourself some wiggle room. But Jerry's being honest. Dak has a lot of leverage. But here's the thing. Dak Prescott with all the leverage, right? The fact of the matter is Dallas dodged a bullet by Dak turning down the deal they offered, right? If you offer a guy a deal you think he's worth about $35 million a year, and one of those years you got to give him the $35 million, but he doesn't play, that means really you gave him a deal for, instead of 4 years or 5 years, whatever, at 35, you gave him a deal for 3 or 4 years at like 45 or 50. No, he's not. Jerry is telling the truth, but the truth also is you got to be careful with these contracts. Right now, the Rams got burnt with the Goff deal. The Eagles got burnt with the Wentz deal. And I like Dak more than either of those guys, but he ain't Patrick Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. He's going to get his money, though. This weekend's game bigger for Lamar or Brady? Answer might surprise you. Max Kellerman Show.
Coming up later, the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced its 15 finalists for 2021. We'll tell you who's a lock on the first ballot and the most.
Yes, the Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker. See what upset Marcus Spears likes in this weekend's playoff games in a few. You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests join me on the Goodyear Hotline.
Chase Young and the Washington football team are pumped for their NFC wildcard contest with Tampa. He was heard saying, "I want Tom."
He's a hell of a player. Yeah, we'll have our hands full, but it's one of those games where you better watch what you wish for.
How big a game is this for Tom Brady? Is this a forgotten season if he loses? This, by the way, is this the biggest game of Lamar Jackson's career? And if Lamar loses this one, is there concern about his ability to lead the Ravens? Forget about to the Super Bowl. How about out of the first round of the playoffs? Look, the fact of the matter is there are quarterbacks under pressure in these playoffs, and that includes Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes that they're not playing this weekend. But of every quarterback playing this weekend, including Lamar Jackson, who I'm going to get to in a second, there's more pressure on Tom Brady than anyone else. There's the most pressure on Tom Brady. Let me explain. I know he's the GOAT, and he's won 6 Super Bowls. And by the way, he had another fantastic season. He's turning 167 years old next year, and he had another fantastic season. And by the way, at this moment, who looks better, Brady or Belichick? It went back and forth this year, right? The bottom line is Belichick did a great job coaching, I thought. Won 7 games with nothing. But Brady won 11 games. He was set up to look good, but he looked good. Just because it's set up that way doesn't mean you have to look good, and he exceeded, I think, even optimistic expectations. Look, there were some people that, they're going to win 12 or 13 games. It wasn't like that, but you win 11 games. That's a hell of a season. It's first time in a new place. Offensive system, the exact opposite of how you've played in recent years. And he did a fantastic job, and the Bucs are really good. But that's the point. The Bucs are really good. You know who they're playing? Week 1 of the playoffs. You know who they have this weekend? A sub-500 team. They have the worst team in the playoffs in Washington. They have a team that I really think is only in the playoffs because Philadelphia, the reason Washington's in the playoffs is because Philly's head coach, Doug Peterson, pulled such a move that people like me are like, he needs to be fired. And it's not just because I'm a Giants fan. Washington's fortunate. Maybe Washington wins the game anyway, but I don't know. I tend to think Jalen Hurts gets it done. Remember when Washington was up 10-0 and it looked like that Philly was just going to roll over? Hurts wasn't having it. That's why he got pulled from the game in the fourth quarter. There was a chance he could win. And that's why Washington, otherwise they're a 6-win team, right? And the Giants get in as a 6-win team. No, that's the worst team in the playoffs, the Washington football franchise. And Tom Brady is peaking at the right time. He's got the team peaking at the right time. I give Brady just as much credit as I give Arians. You got to give him credit for this. It's not coincidence that the Bucs are coming together at just the right time. No, give Brady credit, but that's the point. The Bucs have a defense. The Bucs have a quarterback. The Bucs have an offense. The Bucs have a coach. The Bucs have an embarrassment of riches on offense. Brady even has his security blanket and Rob Gronkowski. And what does Washington have? A quarterback who was going to retire and then didn't retire, and maybe he was going to have to retire because of an injury, but comes back, but then he gets hurt again. Another quarterback who was a first-round pick who's gone. They're like, no, see you later. We don't want you. Washington has a defense, it's true. And any given Sunday, but that's the point. If Brady loses in the first round to a sub-500 team without Belichick as his head coach, oh, wait a minute, Brady. You got Evans and Godwin and Gronkowski and multiple tight ends, and you got a coach, you got a defense, you got everything you need. You can't beat Washington, a nameless franchise literally with a sub-500 record and no real quarterback to speak of? You got to win that game if you're Tom Brady, because what is this season really about in the long term? One of the great debates of the 21st century in sports. Was it more Belichick or was it more Brady? In fact, I'm willing to say that's the number one debate in sports in the 21st century, because it's all happened in the 21st century, right? Turn of the century is really the first 20 years of this century were about the Patriots. And the great question was it more Belichick or was it more Brady? Brady can't lose in the first round to the Washington football franchise. He can't do it. Well, he's already the GOAT and this and that. All right. Once upon a time, do you know who Tom Brady was before there was a Tom Brady? Or rather, who was Tom Brady before Tom Brady? Tom Brady, the original Tom Brady's name was Joe Montana. And by the way, back in the old days, the GOAT had the decency to look like a regular guy. Joe Montana. He didn't look like a male supermodel. Joe Montana, you could have a beer with him, you know? Tom Brady. Give me a break. Anyway, the point is, Joe Montana was to Marino as Brady was to Peyton Manning. You knew Montana was in a better situation with a better coach. You knew he was the guy you really wanted to have with the chips on the line. But you suspected he was lucky to be with Joe Walsh. And that had Marino been with Joe Walsh, there wouldn't have been a comparison, right? Because Dan Marino was putting up numbers, and when you just the eyeball test, you're like, ooh, that dude has different kind of talent. And by the way, that was like Brady and Peyton Manning. What did I say? Bill Walsh. What did I say? I'm hearing in my ear I said something other than Bill Walsh. I said Joe Walsh. Okay.
You said Walsh. Joe Walsh.
I may have gotten my wires crossed and done that all day today.
Yeah.
Bill Walsh, the 49ers head coach, of course. Sorry. So Walsh revolutionized the game and all that with his offense, and Montana was the beneficiary. It seemed, right? Just like Brady with Peyton Manning. If Peyton Manning had Belichick, could you imagine? And Brady just kept winning and winning, and Montana just kept winning and winning. But Montana eventually got the boot because they had Steve Young waiting in the wings, and Steve Young was growing old waiting for Montana to get out of there. And he was one of the all-time greats, right? And everyone knew it, the best backup in football by far. Young went on to win a Super Bowl. Well, what did Montana do when he left Bill Walsh and the 49ers? Took the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game. As soon as he lands in another spot, they're in the AFC Championship game. Not that the Niners also didn't have success with Steve Young, but Montana showed, guys, I was going to be great wherever I went, and if anything, added to his legacy. Imagine if Tom Brady leaves Bill Belichick, and because coaches can keep coaching, right? Belichick won 7 games with nothing on the team. What happens when he has something on the team? Tom Brady on this loaded team goes out in the first round. It's bad, man. That's the number one sports debate of the 21st century. Was it more Brady or was it more Belichick? And I'm watching that. I know a lot of people, oh, no, that's not. Believe me, that's the story. When you tell the story of this era, you hear the narrator's voice, that's going to be the storyline. Brady or Belichick. There's huge pressure on Tom Brady in these playoffs. Now, Lamar Jackson for sure. Lamar Jackson, I'm the one who's pointed it out consistently. Everyone's like, well, he can't beat good teams. No, he's beaten plenty of good teams. Lamar Jackson could beat good teams. The question is, can he win? Can Lamar lead you to victory when the lights are shining brightest? When you play Pittsburgh with Roethlisberger? Nope, lost. When you play the Chiefs with Mahomes, right? If you're in the AFC, you got to beat Mahomes and the Chiefs. If you're in the AFC North, got to beat Roethlisberger and the Steelers, can't do it. In the AFC, you got to beat the Chiefs, can't do it. 0-3. 0-1 against Roethlisberger Steelers, 0-3 against the Chiefs. If you want to win a Super Bowl, you got to win in the playoffs, right? 0-2. 0-6. Dude almost never loses otherwise. Beating plenty of good teams. Not just the good teams. It's when the lights shine brightest. So Lamar playing the Tennessee team that's already beaten him this year, that knocked him out of the playoffs last season, Lamar Jackson playing those guys on the road, he's under pressure. No question. But Lamar has time. He can lose this game, and I'm not saying there's not pressure to win, but even if he loses it, presumably he will be back in this situation probably next season. Tom Brady's turning 167 next year. How do you know that this might be the best chance he has to prove his point? It's not just TB12. He wants to play till he's 45 to sell his products. It's not just, I still love the game. Come on. Why does he split from Belichick and pick the Bucs of all places? Tampa, really? Why does he pick Tampa? Because he's set up for success in Tampa. That's why. It's actually a bigger game this weekend for Tom Brady against Washington than Lamar Jackson against Tennessee. Marcus Spears. I didn't know you were waiting there. NFL analyst, of course, on ESPN on the Goodyear Hotline. Marcus, you there?
Yeah, I'm glad somebody told you. Dang. What's up, man?
It's about time. I'm tap dancing, waiting for you to come on, and you're sitting right there. Marcus, who is this weekend, who has the biggest game this weekend of every player in the NFL? Who is facing the most important game this weekend?
Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson, and it's not even close. Max, is because Max, I said the wrong name. Tom Brady, my bad. It's because of his age, all the things you just mentioned.
I was about to, I thought we were going to have a good debate just now. Of course it's Tom Brady.
Yeah. No, man, no. I see it exactly how you see it. But I see it, too, from the standpoint of, all of the talk, obviously, about him leaving Belichick. But more than that, can we acknowledge that he signed a 2-year deal with Tampa, was supposed to be a significant upgrade over Jameis Winston, and he did not go to Tampa not to win a Super Bowl. We could all think that he went to Tampa to try to prove that he is better without Bill Belichick or that it was more him. But the real reason Tom Brady went there, and the real reason you kind of closed the book on who was more responsible, is to win a Super Bowl. That's the bottom line. So, yeah, it's Brady. A big part of it is Father Time, obviously, and another part of it is that you don't have, Lamar Jackson, for all intents and purposes, is responsible for the majority of his team's success, and it will be blame on him But it'll also be blame on Greg Roman. It'll be blame on whatever other offensive unit didn't show up the way they were supposed to show up. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers don't win the Super Bowl, it's going to be because of Tom Brady. Now, we might mention Byron Leftwich and mention Bruce Arians, but the conversation is going to revolve around Tom Brady went to Tampa and couldn't get it done.
You know, I think that's exactly right. And I think there's also something about the team facing the lesser challenge is under more pressure, right? Like, you're expected to win. If you're facing the worst team in the playoffs, you're facing a team with 7 wins, and maybe the only reason they even had 7 wins or are in the playoffs is because the team playing them on the final week of the season pulled their starter, right? Or maybe they're not even in the playoffs, and you're facing a 6-win team. But when you're facing that franchise, doesn't even have a name right now, right? The Washington Redskins, Stephen A. always makes fun of them for that. They don't even have a name, but he's right. Like, it's a franchise in disarray until this year. You're expected to win. You're hosting them. You are a complete team, top to bottom, offense, defense. I was mentioning all the offensive weapons. I didn't even mention A.B. Antonio Brown, one of the greatest players who ever played the game. I didn't even mention him. They have so many guys you got to get through on that offense. You got to win that game. Whereas the Ravens, they got their work cut out for them. They're facing a team that seems to have their number. They beat them in the playoffs. They beat them this year. Derrick Henry's running like crazy. Tannehill's really good. I think there's more pressure on the quarterback facing the lesser team.
Max, you absolutely, like absolutely. I mean, look, Lamar Jackson got his pressure, but his pressure revolves around previous playoff situations. His pressure doesn't revolve around, how many more goals, how many more chances is he gonna have to do it. And then, too, to your point, like, the way we all killed the NFC East, and you telling me Brady exits against the Washington football team in week 1, that's Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay right now is in the playoffs, right? And that's the one goal you need in order to deem the season a success. But go lose to the Washington football team and hear how fast of a disaster this season was. We ain't going to remember that they went to the playoffs. We ain't going to remember that they won 11 games, 10 games, whatever it is. What we going to remember is they lost to the best, worst team in the NFC East and the NFL, per se, and Tom Brady was leading those guys. So it's all pretty much predicated on not only Tom Brady, but it's also predicated on the situation that both of these guys are in. Like, we know Tennessee can beat a good team. We know Tennessee is shown to have the ability to be one of those teams we talk about as far as being as good as any other team in the league outside of their defense. But, Tom losing to the Washington football team, bro, it's a failure. The season was a failure, even with all of the good things that transpired.
Marcus, I got 30 seconds to a minute on each of these topics. I want to get through them with you right now. Do the Browns have a shot without Stefanski, who will not be able to coach due to COVID, against the Steelers at Pittsburgh?
Max, I hate to say that they don't have a shot, man. I mean, it's one of those things where you try to determine, like, what's the biggest drawback, right? Like, Baker can still ball. The running game can still have some success, even though Batonio, the big offensive guard, is out. A lot of things can happen, I guess, in regards to having success in the outing. My only issue, bro, is the feel of the game. Like, when those critical decisions need to be made, that critical play, that critical third down. It's not just about the particular talent. It's about putting that talent in a great spot, right? Like, and that's what we've lauded about Kevin Stefanski, is that he's seen for the majority of the year outside of the Jets game to have the answers for Baker Mayfield, for this offense. Even in close games, even in tight games, he seemed difficulty that they don't have trying to beat a team with Kevin Stefanski on the sideline and vying to get into the playoffs, and you only beat them by 2 without Big Ben playing, without T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward. It's a tall task, man. It's gonna take a special performance from Baker Mayfield, but also this defense. And you know
that's the drama. Baker Mayfield. That's the drama. I mean, on defense, of course, but, you know, the Steelers have such a hard time running the ball. But can Baker make enough plays to win this thing without his guy there, without Stefanski there? Real quick, we have about 30 seconds. What's the best job opening in the NFL at head coach, Marcus?
Los Angeles Chargers.
Over the Texans with Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, but we all know the issues in Houston, Max. We all know that they don't have any draft picks.
Yep.
They got to figure out a way to get some offensive talent. The defense is horrible. They got to figure out a way to upgrade players on that side of the ball as well. And they got to make coaching decisions. With the Chargers,
No, I'm with you. I think it's the Chargers. You're in L.A. You got Justin Herbert. I think you're right, Marcus.
Yeah, Max, but even think about this. Like, you not only have Justin Herbert, you have Keenan Allen, who's already signed long-term. So you got your number one receiver. Yep. You got Mike Williams as well. You got Austin Eckler, who was injured, who I think is a really good back. And you got stalwarts on defense. You know, Bosa's there. Melvin Ingram is there. People forget Derwin James was injured, but he was trending towards being one of the top safeties in the NFL, you know, when we looked at how he played.
You're right. You got premium playmakers.
Everywhere.
You have premium playmakers on defense. You're right. High end. Yep. All right. That was Marcus Spears, ladies and gentlemen. We're up against it. Marcus, thank you very much. Sorry for the awkward goodbye. I blame that on Raj. Joined us on the Goodyear Hotline, the great Marcus Spears. Of course, you can check him out. He's all over the place. You can see him on Get Up, on First Take, on NFL Live, here on the Max Kellerman Show. Goodyear, helping you discover the road ahead. Goodyear, more driven. ALA. The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio, ESPN Plus, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, and on your smart speaker. Rams got a big playoff game coming up, but who will be the quarterback? You can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. The Max Kellerman Show is presented by Progressive Insurance.
You don't recognize this, Max?
It's too. I can't hear the volume is too low. Raj.
Well, it's you mentioned Joe Walsh earlier, so it's the former Niners head coach Joe Walsh and his rock band that you referred to earlier.
Oh, that's Bill Walsh and his band, huh? What? I don't get it. You're trying to tell a joke. Listen, you can reach me at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Raj, who's my producer based in L.A., this is the COVID days, so I'm in New York, he's in L.A., and we're, talking with a slight delay and over Zoom. Sean McVay is at it again. He's at it again. Who will start at quarterback for the Rams? In the playoffs. That should be an easy question to answer. The number one overall pick in the draft, to whom the team handed over a $100 million plus contract and has quarterbacked them to a Super Bowl. Jared Goff. Or his backup, Walford, right? Who's going to be the quarterback? Is now the time to play it coy? Because Sean McVay, Rams head coach, made it known on Tuesday during his press conference that he will not be answering the question of who will start for the Rams at quarterback this week. Goff reportedly was able to get some snaps in during Tuesday's practice, so that's the good news. However, game day will be roughly 12 days removed from having surgery on his thumb, so expectations should be tempered. But you know what you could say if you're McVay? Obviously, if Jared is good to go, he's our quarterback. You could say that. If he has said that, I haven't heard it. right? Isn't that a no-brainer? If Goff is good to go, he's the quarterback, right? Or does the hot hand keep the ball? I'll just remind everybody, the Rams franchise, it wasn't heading into the playoffs, but experienced something. You talk about Kurt Warner getting his job, the way he got his job. But Kurt Warner also lost his job when he was the MVP of the league, the best player in football maybe, the orchestrator of the greatest show on turf, got hurt. And Mark Bulger, who no one thought was great, but everyone thought he was solid. But the Rams were winning with Bulger. They were like 8-0, I want to say. This was the year that the Bucks won the Super Bowl. That Chucky, that John Gruden, beat the Raiders. So what was this? 03? 02? 03? And Mark Bulger won 8 straight games, and the Rams, Kurt Warner got healthy. They were like, sorry, we're going to stay with this guy. That's the way it works in the NFL. It's crazy like that. It doesn't work like that in any other sport. No other sport. If a star baseball or basketball player goes down, but now he comes back and he's healthy and he's ready to go, they never tell that guy, but the guy who replaced you, it's not that we think he's better than you, it's working right now, so you're just going to sit on the bench. Oof. Joseph in Texas, you're on the Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio.
Hey, Max, how you doing? I just had a question about how you're talking about Peterson and the decision he made in the fourth quarter to set Hurts down.
Yep.
What is the main difference in competition-wise with what Pittsburgh or Kansas City did?
Oh, you want okay? That's a perfectly fair question with a very simple explanation, with a very easy answer. The difference is in a game that was flexed to primetime because they had playoff implications for the division. You're playing a divisional rival, and whether you win or lose will determine whether that team you are playing goes to the playoffs. If you beat them, they are not. Or another divisional rival goes to the playoffs. If you lose, the team you're playing goes to the playoffs. If you win, you keep them out of the playoffs, and another divisional rival goes. That's why it was flexed to primetime. And in that game, in the fourth quarter of a one-score game, remember, he opted not to kick the field goal to go for it. I'm not even going to kill him about that. The only chance you had to win was to leave your quarterback that you selected in the second round. You spent a second-round pick. You didn't use it to trade up to get DeAndre Hopkins for Carson Wentz. You didn't use it to package, to move up to get CeeDee Lamb or whoever was considered the best receiver in the draft. You kept it to draft a quarterback because you thought it may come to this given Carson Wentz's regression, and it did. And now you need to know, is this the guy? Well, you're in primetime. Let's find out. Is he the guy? Is Jalen Hurts the guy? Can he get it done? No. You'd rather evaluate the third-string quarterback? That's nonsense. Is it so important to move up from 6 to 9 in the draft that you do something as anti-competitive as that? No. The Chiefs are totally different. The Chiefs have the division wrapped up. There are no implications for, it's all wrapped up. It frequently happens at the end of the season. If you have a playoff spot wrapped up, you rest everyone. I can't remember it happening where a divisional rival has a chance to play spoiler and in the fourth quarter sits down their quarterback that they need to find out about going forward. To do what? To move up 3 spots in the draft? I would even understand if Trevor Lawrence was sitting there for the Jets and they had to go winless and they somehow managed to almost win a game and they're like, we're risking a generational talent who can totally transform our franchise. Let's say the Jets were not playing in a game with divisional playoff implications, right? Okay, I get it. A lot of people would argue with me there. No, you still can't. No, I get that. This was not that. The Max Kellerman Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who save with Progressive save over $750 on average. Call or click today and find out find out if they could save you hundreds on your car insurance. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Last take is your take, and that's coming right up. Hindsight is 2020. 2020 was a brutal year with a lot on First Take today. I talked about how, times are changing in the sense that there was just a special election in Georgia where 2 senators were elected one of them a black man, Reverend Warnock, who ran against Kelly Loeffler, who is the owner of the Atlanta Dream, the WNBA team, who came out against Black Lives Matter. And it got to the point where her own team, the players on her own team, were wearing T-shirts saying, "Vote Warnock," who won the election in the Deep South, a black man. And so when you contextualize what's going on, even as it relates to sports, this is a sports show, you can see the anger and the frustration and the indignation felt, and Dominique Foxworth expressed this on First Take today, ESPN's own Dominique Foxworth, when people recall not all that long ago, peaceful protesters, many of them people of color, outside the White House were fired upon with tear gas and rubber bullets in order that Trump could go across the street and have a photo op at a church. But here, armed insurrectionists attempting a coup of the federal government storm the building and somehow are able to gain access to the Capitol, and by the way, brought a Confederate flag inside. And I think many people will recognize the fact that it's hard to prove a counterfactual, right? But just imagine for a second if those were black protesters, if those protesters were African American and armed and attacking the Capitol building, what would happen? Do you think they would gain access? Or do you think they would be met with deadly force? That's what so many of the players in the NBA and in the sports world, that's the kind of stuff that they're reacting to now. Colin Kaepernick's protest was narrowly about police interactions with communities of color. And this is not the first time, by the way, armed insurrectionists have stormed a Capitol building, because they stormed a state Capitol building not all that long ago and were able to gain access to it. And here, the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., they're able to gain access. And I said at the time when it was a state Capitol building, imagine if the protesters were armed and African American. Do you think they would ever gain access, or would they be met with deadly force? So narrowly, Colin Kaepernick's protest was about police interaction with communities of color. And you can see why there's so much anger about it. But broadly, it was about social justice. Broadly, it was about the kind of inequities that persist in our society, whose roots can be traced back to slavery, the original sin of this country, and whose pernicious effects continue to this very day. Obviously, very serious business going on in the real world right now. And incidentally, these insurrectionists are there in order to stop the certification of an election, which in spite of claims of fraud, all those claims were completely debunked. There was and every time they were looked into it and recounted votes, they found, nope, nothing would change this election. And now, because these insurrectionists can't get their way, because they feel a loss of power, they're trying to insist on their way anyway. Just imagine if they were black. That's what Colin Kaepernick was talking about. That's what LeBron James is talking about. And that's what I'm talking about. Max Kellerman Show, ESPN Radio. See you tomorrow.
Coming up later, the Pro Football Hall of Fame announced its 15 finalists for 2021. We'll tell you who's a lock on the first ballot, and the most famous intro in pro wrestling graces the show with his presence. That's all coming up later. Chinangola Jr., 4 Eastern, here on ESPN Radio and ESPN+.